Okay, we are live. Hey guys, it is Thursday. I keep wanting to say it's Tuesday. Today is Thursday, October 18th, 2018, episode 259 of The TED Show. I'm with my beautiful friend next to me, Chris Lowe, and I'm very glad that she's here, but I know you guys need to send me some hearts and some thumbs up to let me know you can hear us and see us. And I want to make sure that because we have a very important message, I think that what Chris is doing, we have a lot to talk about today. So give us a thumbs up, give us a heart. The club has been gracious to allow us one more show in this beautiful wine room we're in right now. Shannon just gave us a thumbs up, and I think Shannon posted earlier. All right, so welcome. We were trying to talk about when we first met, and I think it was at a Women's Council of Realtors Health and Wellness. You came in looking 25 years younger than you are, and you were promoting your exercise fitness, correct?
Yeah.
And we kept in touch back and forth. Facebook is so good about that, social media. So let's talk, let's dive in. Give us a background on you. I shared what you shared about you and your life and about Hudson. And so I would like you to take the reins over and share, and then I'll ask questions as we go along.
Okay. Well, hi everyone. Thanks for joining today. We're going to talk a little bit about my story, which involves, my son committed suicide last year, and even saying the S word is so hard to say, and a lot of people do not want to talk about it. It's kind of taboo. There's like a stigma around it. And a lot of people are afraid to talk about it because they're afraid it might happen to someone around them. So it's like, well, if I just don't say anything, maybe I'll just never have to deal with this. Of course, I personally never thought I would have to deal with something like this in my family.
Why did you think that? Because, like most parents, we were talking earlier, Hudson was incredibly involved, gifted, sports, in a fraternity, super environmentalist, sustainability, like incredibly engaging human being.
Right.
And so it just was never on your radar.
Right, no. I mean, he was like the all-American kid. He had it all, and he had everyone that knew Hudson loved him, and everyone was his best friend. The day after everything happened, people were just pouring in my house and crying and saying, he was my best friend, he was my best friend, he was my best friend. Every person. I mean, that's the kind of guy he was. He made everyone feel like they were his best friend. So he wasn't this, sad kid with bad things, whatever. I mean, he was, it was just this all-American kid. So no one suspected it. If you'd ask anyone who's the last person this would ever happen to, he would be the one. So
it was so full of life.
Yes.
And he was such a giver. That's why I think it impacted so many people. It wasn't just the age, but it was the fact that he had touched so many people and continued to touch people, and they felt so connected to him.
Yes, and he was very good at connecting with people. He would ask all the right questions. When he talked to people, he really wanted to know the answers. A lot of people ask you a question, they're like, yeah, and they just kind of go off. But he really was interested in people and asked them their stories, and we would spend hours talking to people we just met because he wanted to know, oh, you were in the Navy, oh, you went to Vietnam, oh, you did this, and he's asking them all these great questions. Actually, he would be great at what you do.
He would be excellent.
But he was just a great kid, and he had the best high school career, I call it, because he was so involved in high school, and he was in the marching band, and he just had a great time. Homecoming court and student government and all these things. And he went to college. He went to FAU down in Boca, and it was, we went to that school. We went to a lot of schools, and we walked into that school. He said, this is the school. He knew that's where he wanted to go, and we signed him up right then. And even down there, he started a green club, a green initiative club. He also started one at his high school. He was very involved in the community, wanted to change everything about solar energy and the environment and climate change and all those things. And he was just, he was really like high on life. That's how I would always describe him. He's just high on life. His whole group of friends were just high on life and going out and getting things done. And if you would ask anyone that knew him, who was going to save the world, Hudson was going to save the world.
So this is your story. So I want to
Right.
encourage anybody who's listening to Chris's story about Hudson to be very respectful of that, because I want her to tell her story. So what was the catalyst, or what changed? If you, because obviously that's going on, and you think, oh my God, this kid's going to change the world, and
Right.
still will, and we'll talk about that because you're continuing his mission and his passion. But what was it, in your opinion, or from your heart, that made the change, that it wasn't that way anymore?
Right. Well, when he went to college, he started taking Adderall for finals and, any kind of testing and what have you. And I also think he drank like Red Bull with the Adderall, which so he was getting so hyped up. Those are two things that bring you up. He wasn't prescribed Adderall. He was getting it wherever you get it when you're in college and high school. I guess it's all over campuses from what the kids tell me. Yeah. So that, to me, that was the beginning. And he would come back from school, or we would go see him, and it's like every time we saw him, he was a little less of who he was. He was a little less vibrant in his eyes. He was a little less passionate about what he was actually doing in life. He was more like, no, I have to do this. I have to get this done. And I was like, Hudson, just take a break. Let's just take a year off school. You don't have to do this. He said, Mom, if it was easy, everyone would do it. I'm doing it. It's hard, and I'm doing it. And he was never like this scholar student. He wasn't just, he was like a genius in his thinking,
Right.
but he wasn't like just straight A's and things like that. He had to actually work for his grades. But he would make hovercrafts, and he built a hovercraft. He'd ride down the street on it, and he'd do circuit boards, and he'd invent things and do the Rubik's Cube, so as he would come back from school, he was a little less interested in those things. And then because of the Adderall, he would get these extreme highs and lows. So then he went to the doctor. I guess one night he was even at the emergency room, unbeknownst to me, until his sister saw him on Snapchat and said, oh, Hudson's at the ER.
Wow.
So I called him, what are you doing at the ER? He's like, oh, I just had a little panic attack, so I came here and they gave me some Xanax. So easy as that. So then he had Xanax. Well, then he's getting these highs and lows because of these things that are happening, and then he's getting headaches, and then he can't sleep. And then he's so tired from not sleeping, he can't get up when he does go to sleep. And it's like one thing led to another. And when it was all said and done, a psychiatrist prescribed him 6 different prescriptions, one for each of those things I was talking about. And like I said, this was a kid who was on nothing.
Because before
this.
Adderall, he wasn't on anything.
Nothing, no.
Yeah, he was not on any prescriptions.
No, and he wasn't depressed. He wasn't having any issues. There was nothing going on during high school. So it's like all of a sudden, we just start noticing these things.
And to reiterate for the people that are joining, this wasn't a prescription that he had gone to. This is something that he had started on his own, because it is readily available everywhere.
Yeah.
And so anybody whose kid's on it, that's not what we're saying. If you've been diagnosed, then you do your thing with your doctor, your family physician.
Right.
In his case, he didn't have any diagnosis to support taking it.
Right.
And so it began to have all of those things that they say on the commercial, all the bad things. Started to creep in.
Right. That's exactly right. And what you said is exactly true, because some people are prescribed Adderall for ADHD and things like that, and it works for them, and I'm not a doctor, I'm just a concerned mother, because, had I known that all these things were affecting him in this way, I would have done things a lot different. Clearly, I didn't know the effects and the tolls this was taking on his mind. And, when someone gets to the point of having suicidal thoughts, unfortunately, a lot of people don't tell anybody.
Right.
Or they do tell people, but they don't really take them seriously, because, especially someone like him, because he was this great kid, and they're like, well, he's talking like that, but he's probably not going to do anything. So maybe he said it, some things, but it's not anybody's fault that he told them. It's just a lot of people don't take anyone seriously when they do say that.
Right.
Unless they are the type of person they think, yeah, this is probably serious. But, the next day, people were saying, I was so worried I was going to tell you we should Baker Act him today. And, it's too late. So,
and that's the thing, and I want you make such a great point. I want to just drive that home. If somebody says it, if it's serious enough that they're going to say it, it's not the joking kind of, oh my God, I don't want to do this and I'm going to hurt myself, kill myself. This is somebody who's saying it out loud. You really need to take every single one of those comments seriously every single time.
Yes.
Don't ever not take it seriously. So if somebody's confiding in you and talking to you about it, do whatever you can to get that person help.
Yes.
So because I've worked in that before and have seen it, people who usually talk about it, there's a good chance that they will follow through on it, or at least attempt to. And
I'll add right now that just in case anybody's watching this who's feeling that way, there is a text hotline. It's 741-741. If you text that, you can get in touch with someone, because there's the 1-800 number, the hotline. But I know a lot of young people, and even people our age, people are texting nowadays. And something like this, maybe they don't want to make the phone call. Maybe they would send a text and say, hey, I think I might do something to myself. And someone will immediately answer that text, and they can start a conversation and know if it's an emergency, if 911 needs to be called, or find you the proper person to talk to. Sometimes someone that's in that place just needs someone to talk to, and not peer to peer, not two teenagers talking about this situation, but an adult who can say, you know what, I understand what you're feeling, and thank you for who posted the 1-800 number for the National Suicide Hotline. But to actually talk to an adult, a professional, someone that can actually help you maneuver through the thoughts. Because, from what I've studied, a lot of people, they may get the thought and think, maybe I'll do this, and then they talk to the right person and they say, oh, I don't know what I was thinking. I was just, everyone feels down at some point in life. Everyone feels sad, going through all this that I've had to go through, and my daughters and, Hudson's dad and everyone in my entire family has had to deal with this. Everyone has felt this horrible pain and grief, and his friends, what if I could have done something, the guilt, and just everything that you go through with this sort of thing. I never really understood it until I've dealt with it firsthand. But, I've heard people actually make comments like, oh, well, they're just selfish to do something like that. And that is so far from the truth, because when people are at this point, it is like he didn't know what else to do at that moment. Right. But at that moment, if he could have talked to me or an adult or the texting or the hotline, somebody, and said, I think I'm going to do this, maybe that person could have said, all right, honey, tell me what's making you feel this way. Let's talk through it.
Just a second.
One thing, one person listening could just change what somebody's doing. So, and I heard a story recently that I really found interesting, and we can get to this part of this later, but I heard a story of someone who called into the hotline, the suicide hotline, and I don't know where this was, but it's a secondhand story. But they called in and said, I think I'm going to hurt myself. And the person talked to him on the other end of the line, and said, do me a favor, think of something right now that you could do for somebody else. And the person's like, well, why would I do that? I just want to do this to me right now. And they said, no, just for a minute. Who could you help, right? Who could you help? Who could around you right now could use help? And they thought for a second and thought, well, there's a lady a couple houses down, and she always is out raking her leaves. I guess I could help rake her leaves because they're all over her yard. And so on the hotline, the person said, okay, I'm going to wait right here. Run out there right now, get the rake, get some bags. Just rake that up for her. and then come back. I'm going to sit right here and I am going to wait for you. Just run in and help someone real quick, help her out. And the kid came back to the phone after he went and helped the neighbor, and the neighbor woman came out and was like, thank you so much. I appreciate this so much. And when he came back to the phone, the person on the other end said, well, how do you feel? And he's like, you know what? I don't feel like I want to hurt myself now.
Right.
You know, it's like all of a sudden they felt like, wow, I just did something to help somebody else. It's like it takes you out of how you're feeling inside.
Right.
And you actually do something to make a difference for someone else, and all of a sudden he felt better. And see, just that moment, he was like, it took him from that place to a place of doing good for someone else. And all of a sudden you're not sitting there, you know, it's like you're feeling bad for yourself because you're in this situation. But when you take it and do something good for someone else, which is basically what I'm doing.
Well, let me ask you about that, because so when I heard about Hudson, one of the things that I noticed almost immediately was that you had made that's just, as a parent, I can't even imagine. So everybody deals with grief and stress, and that's sort of what we're talking about here. And just that tragic, as from a parent's perspective, my heart was broken for you. You almost immediately on social media you made a choice. I know you had to have made a conscious choice. This is what we have to do. We have to continue what Hudson was going to do. And I don't know if that was out of you're working on adrenaline at that point. You just decide, there had to be something in you that said, this is what I have to do. I can't focus on all of the grief all the time. And we talked about this earlier. You said, I don't get all teared up anymore as much as I did in the beginning, but I noticed immediately, and I thought, oh my God, that is one of the strongest people. So talk a little bit about the beginning there, where you've gone through all of the normal grief couple of days, and then it's sink-in time and everybody's gone their other way, and you decide, this is what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, it started right after everything happened. When everything happened, I had a daughter that was in Italy and a daughter that was in Hawaii. And his dad was in Georgia. So I was there. I had to call everyone and tell them this horrific news. That gets to me every time, because I just think of my daughters. One was older and one was younger. He was just turned 20, by the way. And I had to call them and tell them this news. And that's a nightmare. I personally go out and speak about this because I don't want any other mother to have to actually go out and do what I'm having to do, because it's not fun to have to deal with this, but I feel like it has to be done, because I wish a mother would have talked to me. I wish I would have known all the things I know. But anyways, my daughters got back. We flew them back right away, and we started having to plan his service, which is another thing that no father should have to do. And because he was a musician in the marching band, I just looked at my daughter and I said, this has to be the concert of all concerts. And this kid was a rock star. Like, we thought he was going to be a famous rock star, the next Elon Musk, so we're like, he needs the concert of all concerts. So I called his band director, Bernie Hendricks, and I said, Bernie, Hudson needs the concert of all concerts. And he's like, consider it done. And we sat around this big table with everyone from the church, and I said, I want an epic concert. Hudson loves candlelight service. I want candles. I want it to be like, I can't even think of one of his favorite bands, but he was all old school music. But, I'm like, I want it to be like Jimi Hendrix comes out on stage or whatever. So, and that's exactly what it was. I mean, the whole entire marching band was at his service and played the song Simple Man. But what I'm getting to is my daughters and I just had a vision, here's what he wants, here's what we need to do for him, here's what needs to happen. It's almost like we were being guided, and we didn't really know what we were doing, because we were just in a state of disbelief still, and shock. And within the first couple of weeks, we started his nonprofit. And my daughter had actually found this green notebook of his that he had written in over the years. And in the notebook, it said, I want to start a nonprofit. I want to call it Our Green Future. So we started the nonprofit immediately. And it was just like, we're starting a nonprofit. And my daughter, who's 23, she went online and did all the paperwork and got the website and got the domain, and his logo is actually his handwriting that was in his notebook. And so it's like, it kind of started like that. Like, that's what he wants. That's what we're doing. We're starting a nonprofit. And so we did. And our initial idea was beach cleanups and all the things that he wanted to do. You know, he wanted to eliminate single-use plastic. He wanted to make sure, one of his passions was actually going into schools and teaching little kids about solar energy and sustainability. And he would go in to second grade schools and go to the second grade class, and he had a presentation, he had a solar car, and he would have the kids block the sun and let the sun come in, and the car would go, and he would teach them about solar. And it was so funny because he'd even come home and go, Mom, I can't believe these second graders have never heard of climate change. And I was like, Hudson, second graders don't know about climate change, you know? And he was just dumbfounded that a second grader wouldn't know about these. So he was so passionate about it that immediately I said, we need to do a coloring book. He needs a coloring book. And because his name was Hudson, and I called him my sunshine, in the coloring book, he's actually the sun. So we found a graphic artist, and she lives on the other side of the world on, an app. And she made him the sun with sunglasses on. He's got little dimples, and we tried to make him look like Hudson. And the coloring book has helped Hudson save the world.
I love it.
And so that's what we thought we were doing, was helping with the solar energy. My daughter got a job at a solar company. She started selling residential solar. So that's kind of where we thought we were going. And kind of right away, it started turning into more than that with the kids. And I started having mothers and teenagers reaching out to me, like, can you help my daughter? Can you help me? Can you tell me what meds Hudson was on? Can you tell me reactions to these things? And so I ended up starting to help people. And a lot of people were afraid to ask me because you don't really know what to do when someone loses a child. You don't know what to say. So I know it's very awkward, and a lot of people didn't really want to reach out. And slowly, more and more people were reaching out saying, can you talk to my kids? Can you talk to my family? Can you talk to my church group? Can you talk to my school? And it just started snowballing into, now I'm going into high schools and speaking to kids. We talked about this earlier, you and I, but when Hudson was in high school, he did a speech called Fall Forward. And it's a 5-minute speech. It's on YouTube, Fall Forward Hudson Lowe. But he did this speech, and in the speech, it's about if you fall in life, you fall forward. If you fail, keep going. If you fall down, get back up again. And he talks about the leaders in the past that have fallen and gotten back up. And it's so profound that this kid, who has a speech like that? I don't. Do you?
I do not have a speech like that.
Who even has a speech like that? So his student government teacher, said, Hudson, why don't you try this speech competition? And he did, and he won. And it's amazing, and I'm so grateful that we have that speech. Like I said, who even has that? Right. And in his speech, he says, never, never give up. Never give up. Fall forward. And it's just profound that now I'm going out to schools using his speech. And so he is on the screen speaking, and I'm having to watch it over and over again. And at first I thought, what was I thinking? I can't watch this over and over again. It's like heart-wrenching. And then the more I watched it, I was so proud of him for doing that. And so, it's like I knew that he did that speech for a reason. He did it to help all these other people who are struggling, all the Hudsons in the world who are failing and think that when they fail, I failed, so that's it. No, he says, keep going. Never give up. Never give up. And when I speak to these kids, I let him speak. And then I'm just there as his mom saying, he really didn't give up. He was putting things in his body that made his mind think that he had no other choice, that he had no hope. And I know he's looking down now going, crap, I did have hope. I could have gotten through this. What was I thinking? And it's like, I feel like he's watching, going, you know, I could have gotten through this. I know I could have come out the other side and really done amazing things, but he didn't. And so now here I am, trying to help these other kids who are in the same place
You're
as him.
saving lives.
Yeah,
You're
parents,
impacting people.
And the parents, like, parents don't know what to do. Parents are like, my son is doing this or my daughter's doing this. What do I do? And, you know, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert. I'm not a, you know, psychologist. But I can just tell what my story is and send them to the right places.
Correct.
Give them the resources. You know, even the texting hotline. I didn't know that existed. Hudson didn't know that existed. He might have texted that number that night.
Right.
You know, he texted some friends, and when they were busy and didn't answer right away, you know, that was the person, the people he was reaching out to. And, you know, they have to live with that, and that's horrible. And it's not their fault they didn't answer the text. I mean,
Right.
you know, a lot of times we don't answer people's texts, and our kids especially don't answer our texts, right, for like
No.
4 hours, and we're freaking out. And so, you know, it's not like, you know, anybody's fault, but the texting hotline, they would have answered his
741
text.
741.
Yes. Ironically, his birthday is 714.
Wow.
So I always remember the 741 because it's the opposite of his birthday.
To talk about, we've got Our Green Future, we've got the
Yes.
Fall Forward Project, we have Tanks a Lot, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So this is a big deal. You're making such a big impact, not just in his memory, but think of all of I'm preaching to the choir with you, but in my heart, so I get choked up about this as a parent, he's really impacting the world. Because you took it on, you and your family, you all have taken it on. This is a lifelong mission, and think of all the people that you've helped already. All right, so talk about the organization, talk about the 501c3, talk about what you're doing, and talk about Tanks a Lot. Yeah,
well, you know, the interesting thing is, something you said made me remember this, but the week before this happened with him, I was on a cruise, an Alaskan cruise with Oprah magazine. Oprah was actually on the cruise. And there were all these inspiring speakers. And of course, Oprah herself is so amazingly inspiring. And I sat on the back of the ship with my friend, Megan, and I said, you know what? Like, I'm listening to all these people, and I don't really know what my purpose is. Like, I'm doing fitness, and I'm helping people get in shape, but I don't know if that's my purpose. I just feel like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what my purpose is. And you know, we just chatted about that, and I got home from that cruise, and the next day he came over and looked at my photos and was telling me the scientific evidence of glaciers and all these things. And ironically, I really think the inspiration I got off that cruise helped me a lot to get through this, because I did have a lot of good knowledge in my head. But also, after this happened with him, I was like, oh my gosh, this is my purpose. Not holding on to like what happened to him, but actually because of him and what he did to inspire people before he left, is to continue what he did. I'm like, this is my purpose. This is my purpose. I can feel it through every ounce of who I am, that my purpose now is to be his voice. Right. So leading up to, so Tanks a Lot. So ironically, the same person I sat on that ship with talking about my purpose, one day I called her and we were talking, and I said, yeah, I was at the grocery store, and oh, by the way, I made this bag. Oh, I'll grab one right here. I made a bag, and it's one of Hudson's tank tops. And I actually sewed the bottom of the tank top and made it into a grocery store bag. And I was like, Hudson would be so proud that I turned his tank top into a grocery store bag, because he hated single-use plastic. Like, we had to carry groceries out of the store because he would not use a bag. We couldn't buy water bottles anymore. You know, he was so against plastic. So I was like, Hudson would be so proud. And I'm telling her about this bag, and she's like, Chris, that's genius. You need to make bags out of tank tops. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. And I'm like, what can I call it? And I'm like, let's see, it's a tank top. It would be a way to say thank you. And we're like, Tanks a Lot.
I love it.
And in Tanks a Lot, the H in thanks is silent, the H for Hudson. And it's silent because so many people are silently suffering with these suicidal thoughts. And like, Hudson was suffering in silence. And if he would have said one thing to me or anybody, we could have saved him, helped him. And so, so these bags, I actually started making them, and then what I do, here's like just some examples, and these are being donated when I go speak to high schools. So I was at West Orange High School, and all the kids donated tank tops to my cause. So I went in and spoke and showed Hudson's speech and talked to them about, you know, what they're putting in their body, and to be conscious of what they're actually ingesting and watching and listening to, because it's too many toxic things building up. It just creates a mess in your mind, you know. So it's like an exchange of energy. I go in and I speak, and they donate their old shirts that they were going to throw out or get rid of, whatever. And I actually went to Windermere High School, and I walked in, and they had this whole assembly set up, and they just had tank tops lined up across the stage. And it just blew me away, because up on the screen was Hudson's picture and the Fall Forward Project, and all these kids gathered around. I was like, wow, this is what he wants me to do, you know?
Chris. Oh.
Well, it's kind of like you don't have a choice.
I know.
You know, it's like you have to keep going. And but the cool thing is about these schools is these kids. So there's two options, right? They can give me a tank top that's already a tank top, or they can cut a T-shirt, cut the sleeves, and cut the neckline, and make it a tank top.
Sure.
And the cute thing is, these kids are doing it themselves.
Yeah, I love that.
So, and it's so cute because the seamstress, these have so many ladies helping me sew these right now. And they're like, well, do you want us to fix the neck? Because it's kind of chomped up. You know, I'm like, no, I love that. I love that these kids are actually part of this project. Sure. And so involved. And, you know, when I finished at Windermere, some of the kids came up and said, we want to film a documentary, these teen filmmakers who are brilliant. And they're so, like, there's these two girls, and they love Hudson. They're like, we love you, Hudson, you know. And it's so cute because he's not even physically here, and yet these still people are love him and are so attached to his story, because it's just he was larger than life, and it's like his story is just keeps going and going and going. So the goal is with these tank tops starting in January, and I'm speaking all over right now to different high schools, and I want to start going to college and middle school, because in middle school is where a lot of things start, even
Absolutely.
with the bullying.
The bullying.
And the Adderall is on campus. And again, if someone needs Adderall, that's fine. But these are kids just buying it from each other and giving it to each other, which is against the law, by the way. But so the goal is when I go into the schools, the kids will each donate a shirt, and I will give them one back that's actually transformed into a bag. And in the bag will be tools and resources and just, you know, suicide awareness for parents like me who didn't really know what to look for. And a lot of times you're like, no, that couldn't happen to my kid, so I'm just not going to say anything. And then it'll just go away, and then, you know, it doesn't go away.
It doesn't.
So, and when you talk about suicide, if you ask a young person or anybody, you know, are you having suicidal thoughts? That does not, from what the studies are, that does not make someone go, well, now that you mentioned it, maybe I'll do it. That's not what it is. Like, they have this silent thing inside because of the stigmas around it. And they really probably want to say something, but it's just such a hard thing, especially for a young person, you know, to admit to, you know, they want to be like everyone on social media. Like, oh, I have my life together and everything's so perfect. And, you know, I don't want anyone to think I'm flawed.
Yep.
And then, you know, they start talking about it, and then they realize, wow, everybody's flawed. Everyone's going through something. Everyone has bad days or bad weeks or bad months or whatever, but that doesn't define you, you know.
Correct.
Anxiety doesn't define you. Depression doesn't define you. You know, all the things that are going on in the world, you know, it's like these kids, if they would just start talking about it, and I think that's the hardest. We got to get the stigma
away from it. We have to get the stigma away from talking about it. And we have to get the kids, we say this on the show about adults a lot. Facebook is not real. That life that most people are portraying on there,
Yeah.
yes, it's the positives, but it's not always showing the negatives and the things that people are going through.
Right.
And so that's why people feel bad. Well, they compare.
Yeah.
Well, God, I'm having these feelings and these thoughts. My
Yeah.
life's not as good as the 500 friends I have on Facebook. And
Right.
that's just not true.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and I asked some of the kids, like, tell me, you guys, what do you think is part of the problem? Like, we know the problems. We know that everyone's too glued to their phones, not just kids, but adults. We know people don't spend enough time outside. We know that we're eating bad stuff. There's toxins in food and the air. We know all the problems. But I asked them, what do you think is part of the problem? And at one of the schools, the kids said comparison.
Yeah,
Exactly
comparison.
what you said. They're online looking at celebrities or other friends or whatever who are driving a nice car and have a nice boyfriend and their life just looks amazing, and they're sitting at home depressed. Or there's a girl out at the party and she's got all these friends. What they don't see is, like, they take this great selfie of all their friends and then they all walk off and no one's talking to anybody.
Yep.
Or, I told the story recently where, because they're like, well, everyone's having so much more fun than us and we're just sitting home on our phones. Well, a few weeks ago, I was at a Walgreens in the parking lot, and I got to my car, and I look at the car next to me, and the kid next to me is taking pictures of himself, and you can tell he's on Snapchat, he's doing the filters, and then he's playing the music, and he's like, right? And then I see him send it, sits his phone down, sitting in the car.
Yep.
Waiting for his grandma or something in the
Yep,
parking lot.
yep.
But see, everyone looking at him online thinks, wow, he's so cool.
It's
He has
all
such a great
cool.
life. He has such a nice car. He's so happy all the time. But maybe he's really not. So it's like we're comparing ourselves to a fake, something fake.
Yes.
And that's not just kids, that's adults too.
Every day I
Yeah.
see it. All right, so
And-
before we get kicked out of here,
Yes.
we're going to because I could talk about, I want you to come back because I think this topic
Yeah.
is so critical, and what you're doing, what you all are doing, what the foundation's doing, what your organization is doing is just so important.
Yeah.
And we're going to share all of Chris's contact information. We're going to share how you can reach out to her, how you can get involved. We've shared the suicide hotline number on here, and I'll share it again. We shared the text, 741-741, and I'll share that again. But please don't feel like you're going through this alone. There is help. There's a voice. There's somebody out there that wants to listen to you. And you're not the only one feeling these things. So also don't be so hard on yourself when you do have these thoughts. Get with somebody, talk to somebody, reach out to some of these resources. All right, any parting words of wisdom, anything that you want to share with them before we head out?
Well, to piggyback off what you just said, and what Hudson says, anyone that is struggling in their mind, like Ted said, please reach out to somebody, an adult. If you're young, an adult. If your friend has confided in you, say, look, I can't keep this secret. I'll go with you to talk to your parents. I'll go with you to talk to the guidance counselor. I'll go with you to talk to your teacher, the therapist, wherever you can get. Just try to get that person with an adult to talk about it. And, as Hudson said, never give up. Never give up, because 1 second it might seem bad, but the next minute, everything could change. Everything could be so amazing. And just keep falling forward.
Thank you for sharing. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ted.
We love you guys. Mwah.
Thank you, guys.
See you soon.
Bye.